So what the hell has happened to James Wiseman? James Wiseman was looking unbelievable in high school. And if you guys watched him in like junior, senior years, I was still making videos on him back in like the peak of the BBALL Daily channel. Back when that channel was pulling 80, 90,000 views a video. I'm telling you guys, James Wiseman was him. You guys don't really get it if you weren't there at the time. This guy was 7'1", running up and down, blocking shots, had the touch, was a lefty. A lot of people were saying he reminded them of a young Kevin Garnett. This guy he came out of high school in that 2019 draft, and if you were able to come out of high school, let's say hypothetically Zion Williamson had gone the year before out of high school, he would have probably been taken above Ja Morant. That's how highly he was rated. And the 2020 NBA draft, he was taken number 2 by the Golden State Warriors. And honestly, people were saying he was going to go number 1 until the Timberwolves ended up with the number 1 pick, and obviously they weren't going to draft him when they had Karl Anthony Towns. But it just never clicked. His rookie year, he was fine. He had a perfectly fine rookie year. The Warriors weren't very good. They made the play-in game. They lost to the Lakers. Then they went and lost to the Grizzlies. But the next year, he missed the whole year, and the Warriors win the NBA championship. And everybody's talking about the Warriors getting even better because they have James Wiseman. The one thing the Warriors need is a center because they only have Kevon Looney, and they're getting a center back in James Wiseman. And then he balls out in preseason. And then he stinks it up to start the year. James Wiseman, I don't get why he's as bad as he is, because when you watch Wiseman play, in everything he does, you're like, this guy's like 7'1". He's got length, he's fast, he's got decent touch, he's got everything. He just can't put it together. He just can't seem to put it together, and he's now even out of the rotation for Detroit. Like when he first got traded to Detroit, he did okay. He was doing okay. Him and Marvin Bagley reviving their careers in Detroit. But with the with the emergence of Jalen Duren as a potential future All-Star, he just got nothing on that team. He doesn't even have a rotation spot. Can't even play him. He's not even in a rotation for what is one of the 5 worst teams in the NBA. Is there a team in the NBA he can really be an impactful player for? Because even teams that struggle at the center position, he was on one of them, the Warriors. He was literally on one of them, and he couldn't get any burn. So, could this be one of those situations where he's out of the league in 4 years? Like, he's getting DNPs this year in almost every game. Like, what happens next year? Like, this is year 4 for him. Does he even get picked up after this year? I think maybe a team's going to be desperate to get him for potential. But, like, we're looking at a borderline Anthony Bennett level bust. And the difference is that Anthony Bennett was a number 1 pick who people were shocked went number 1. Wiseman might be one of the biggest busts we've ever seen. And I've had arguments about him. Like, I never thought he was that good. Like, once I saw him in the NBA, I didn't think he was going to be that good. And I remember BJ Armstrong when I was on I think it was Playback live stream with him. And again, BJ Armstrong is one of the best basketball minds there is. I remember him arguing with me about how James Wiseman was going to come right in and revolutionize the center position for the Warriors. And man, he mightn't even be an NBA player in 2 years. That is the level, that's the drop-off of James Wiseman. And it's one of the weird things when it comes to NBA basketball right now, is that the talent level is so high. And what I mean by that is like the ability of players rather than the talent level. So the actual production of James Wiseman, he doesn't do anything that well. If James Wiseman's not the best player on your team, he's not an absolute elite shot blocker, he's not an elite rebounder, he doesn't set the hardest screens in the world, he's not a great defender. So like, he doesn't do a role well. But he's not that guy. And the problem is there are so many guys in the NBA like that probably could be a third or fourth option on a bad team and look great. The problem is that if they're the 5th or 6th option, or they're coming off the bench and playing a role, they can't really do it. I think that's kind of where Wiseman falls into. I would love to see Wiseman go off to Europe for a year or two. and just kind of maybe just figure out a little like the intricacies of being a big man and learning how to basically be a guy, be able to play a role, be a 15-ish point a game player. You just never know how he gets on over there, because he's a better player than Ekpe Udoh, and then eventually go back to the NBA, because I think that's his best chance in his career. Because I just think that right now he's in that cycle where he's not getting any rotation minutes, and regardless of where he goes, he's not going to get minutes. He hasn't, like, teams aren't signing him to be a starting or a backup center right now. They're not going to. So he's going to be fighting for those, like, end of the bench minutes wherever the hell he goes after this. And I don't think that's any good for his development, because he's still a really young player and he's still got a long basketball career ahead of him. I'd love to see him drop to a slightly lower level than the NBA, because you're never going to get better in the G League. Like, for a guy like him, you're never going to get better playing in that G League. I'd love to see him go spend 2 years over in Europe and come back to the NBA as a backup center, and he might have the long and solid career. Because I think something really needs to change, because again, these young American players, when they're not in the rotation, so many of them just drop off the face of the earth. And what you don't want is that, like, 14th man and never really playing for your entire career, which is where he might go, which is wild. If you watched him in high school, you would have thought this guy was a future great. So yeah, that is my opinion on James Wiseman. Like, he is one of the biggest busts of the last 10 years. And a lot of the time, busts, you can kind of be like, oh, they just, like, they weren't as athletic enough, they were a bit too white. As much as I hate to admit it, like, they were a bit too European. Your Hazonias, your Jan Veselis, your Dragan Benders. But when we look at the biggest busts, it's very rare that we see a freaky, athletic, coordinated 7'1" player with a bit of touch. We never hear of that guy being a bust. And yeah, that guy's a bust. And I cannot believe it, because I thought he was going to be a future Hall of Famer when that guy was, like, in his senior year of high school. So yeah, that is the video. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.